big up everyone and Terry and the chat. I hope you're all well. For me, I think we are overlooking a few things. First of all, one thing all the greatest managers have always tell us consistently is it is the players. They always tell us we couldn't have done it without great players. If you talk to Sir Alex, if you talk to Wenger, Pep, Mourinho, they always tell us the players. So what has happened at City? City used to have the best squads and buy the best players. And when you have the best players, the rest, their level will become higher. So if you have a Paul Scholes, for example, and a Roy Keane, a Darren Fletcher can play at a higher level. If you have like a Patrick Vieira and you have a Robert Pires and Henry, someone like a Gilberto can play at a higher level. Cities, world class and superstars, two things have happened to them. One, they've been overused. So football players now play too many games. And year in, year out, the likes of your Bernardos, your Kevin De Bruyne, your Rodri, they have played too many games. So what has happened is that physically, they are not there anymore. And in the Prem, it doesn't matter how much technique you have. If you do not have the physicality, you will get overrun. And we've seen so many examples of technically good players who doesn't have the physicality come to the Prem and struggle. So it's key.
I understand where you're coming from. What I would say is this, though: City, what I won't ever do for Man City, same as anyone else in the top six, is care about them moaning about too many games. City and Chelsea have just entered themselves into another tournament at the end of this season, which means they're not going to have a pre-season, and they've done it. It's not the players' fault, but they've done it for the £60 million they're being paid to do it. And for me, hang on, let me finish my point.
Oh, yeah.
And I understand where you're coming from, that there's been a drop-off in quality in players in this Man City squad. I don't think any self-respecting City fan is going to sit there and not admit that the majority of the £500-600 million they've spent in the last 3 to 4 windows has been spent on absolute average players. Jack Grealish, Nunez, Kovacic, Doku. There's tens, there's hundreds. Phillips, hundreds of millions of pounds has been spent in that period, and the vast majority of those signings are nowhere near top class levels. Where I agree with you, King, is when they were playing with peak KDB. When these guys were in their pomp, obviously Rodri in the team, when Mahrez was here and other players, they were being carried slightly by the system and by those top quality players. A number of those players have left. A few of the others have fallen off physically and got injuries. Now what you're seeing is, and listen, and all great teams, all clubs have made this mistake where you invest money into players who are just not as good as you think they are. And one thing sometimes you can't test is how good players are in adversity. And this is something we're now seeing from a lot of these City players, is this, like, for instance, like a Nunez, okay, like a Kovacic, like the likes of Grealish and the Dokus. You guys need to deliver now, because the players that used to deliver are out or injured. What can you guys step up to that mantle and be those players for City? And they're not able to, because right now, and some of them might get better in time. I'm not writing their careers off, but at this particular juncture, they haven't. And City need to spend big, and they need to start spending in 9 days' time, because that's the only way they're going to turn this season around. And they do. They've got to start spending. And I'm not someone who's going to bemoan them doing that, because every club has. A lot of people always go, oh, Arteta spent 790 million euros since he's been the manager. City have spent 720 million in that same time period on top of a squad that was already winning league titles. Everybody has to spend money, and City have just got to go through that. What they've got to hope for, though, is that this time round, the people they buy are good enough. And I think the Pep situations there also. We've got a lot of super chat to jump into. Hamza, I just wanted to get your take on today's game, my friend. Fundamentally manhandled, really, by a better Aston Villa team today.
Absolutely, 100%. Disgrace performance, 100%. It's a joke. It's a joke completely. That's not the standards of Manchester City. Like, to fall down like this, it's a disgrace. Like, disgrace completely. Morgan Rogers was playing, like I said, like Zinedine Zidane. When I saw Zinedine Zidane played for Brazil versus France, yeah, like that was the performance he had. That's an ex-Man City academy. He was just balling out. Not even, and you could see he was just, the players were taking it easy. Duran, outstanding. Tillemans, brilliant. Guy who was getting relegated with the Leicester City. It tells you many things about the football club now at the moment. Low in confidence, 100% when you keep losing. But it doesn't, you don't see a club like Man City. You don't see it. You don't see it because people know. People often, even people cannot count Man City at the title race now. People know.
Yeah,
Many people
you're
say,
out of the title race, Hamza.
I'm still, I'm saying people will still,
bro,
some people are scared to count them out.
No one is scared of
unlike
them.
Hamza, do you think you're at the title race, Hamza?
No, until I see the title race being lifted, I'm not going to consider myself out of the title race because I've seen it before. I've come from like 8 points lead with 3 or 4 games with Fergie and I won it. So I have confidence I can still win it. So to me, I think
I'm going to tell you this, Hamza.
No, I still believe 100%. I'm not being arrogant. I still believe 100%.
If Man City wins the title, I'll give you £100.
Okay.
No, if Man City win the title from here, I will pay for your full hair transplant. I'll pay for the whole thing.
But it hasn't stuck before. I've tried it twice. I'm joking. I'm joking. I've never done hair transplant.
Do you know who you guys really need to put your focus on? It's your recruitment. The players that you've let go. Like your Morgan Rogers, your Cole Palmers. Like you look at the quality of some of the players.
Guys, I don't want to go off track of the game for a moment with Hamza. So on the game, Hamza, you mentioned sort of they worked hard, they performed to a level. What players weren't putting in good enough performances today from a Man City point of view? Who let you down, in your opinion?
My favorite player has been Vardio. He was poor today. I'll tell you one thing.
Everyone was poor today.
Yeah. Vardio has been making mistakes, yeah. And I'll tell you why I say he's poor. You know, within 30 seconds, they could have scored. That's not how you start. Be honest, Terry. That's not how you start.
Well, I agree.
You don't start like passing back a stupid pass. And John Duran could have finished that chance. They could have been 2 or 3-0 up within like 3 or 4 minutes. 3-4-0 up. Yeah, well, we lucky 100%. So I look at player like even when Morgan Rogers got the ball several times, I saw Vardy try to backheel it. But the thing is, Vardy is one of my favorite players. I'm looking at what's happened to this guy. Why are my players so? John Stones are injured now. The problem, it comes down to one thing: you can't drop certain players when you have a little squad. Yeah, so it's gonna cost you. So he doesn't have any option. Pep doesn't have options. Yeah. Let me tell you.
But that's on him.
Anyone, your tacticals, any tacticals listens to me. There is no options. I told everyone in December, there's no options. Options is January. That's the only option. Now is to pray we don't lose against Everton. We don't lose against Leicester. And then January.
So are you also saying then the likes of Simpson, Puzzi, O'Reilly, McAtee, that are you saying that are you saying they're not good enough for Manchester City?
You can't play them at this moment. It will destroy their confidence. I think it's dangerous to play these players when, the senior players are not showing confidence. Captain Kyle Walker is not showing confidence. So imagine
Kyle Walker's been lost
how
for 2
can a
years
youngster
right now.
say he's looking at every senior player, they're down, and he comes there. He knows Pussy was played against Sporting, and City fans blamed him for a mistake. And you don't want to destroy them.
Every time Walker plays, a goal comes because of him. Yeah. He did absolutely nothing on that Rodgers goal. I would rather him kick Rodgers and give up a penalty than to just watch Rodgers go by him.
A lot of what I've heard from yourself, Hamza, and Kel today is players fighting and players giving their all. What's typically true with academy players at all clubs is there's a different type of fight in them because of their affinity to the club that essentially nurtured them. The thing is with O'Reilly and McAtee and players like this, they're going to have legs. They're going to have youthful exuberance. They're going to have energy. This is what I understand that Simpson Puzzi has made a mistake, right? And that's because the way you guys defend is you leave your defenders one-on-one exposed because of the way you push forward and attack, right? That's just the nature of the beast. I get that. But when it comes to the midfield, yeah, Gundogan's legs are shots. Gundogan now, forget who he was and what he did. He now, in my opinion, is going to be no better or potentially worse than your young academy midfield players coming through, simply because he can't run. And what's happened to your team in nearly every single one of these last 12 games is your midfield has been run through, physically run through by players, by the way, that often are not as technically good as Kovacic, not technically as good on the ball as Gundogan. So when you say there's no options, this is where I have to reject that notion. I don't think Pep has explored enough options in these 12 games to say we tried it. If, for instance, you started a few games where Riley and McAtee are getting real game time and nothing changed, then fair enough. If you took Kyle Walker out for at least 2 matches, put an academy right back in there, or kept things as instead today you had Akanji on the bench, instead of bringing Kyle Walker on, okay, who's been horrendous, bring Akanji on, do something, not Akanji, bring Ake on, do something different. But I don't think I do not think Pep has explored enough options.
But I'll give you a game that he
did. There are no options.
I'll tell you the game he explored and he did work. Feyenoord.
Sorry.
3-0 up. Who did he bring on?
McAtee and
McAtee. And I told me, and Feyenoord was third in Eredivisie, and they did a remontada. If they had 15 minutes, they turned us around.
Okay,
I want to ask you something.
I'll come to you in a second, Kings. It's a really. Hang on a minute. So again, if you want to write your youngsters off this early, then fair enough, you can write them off. And I know he brought those players on, but I don't believe your collapse came because you brought young players onto the football pitch. And I'll tell you as to why. Because what you guys have been praised for under Pep for the last 7 or 8 years is that when you bring an academy player on, they just fit straight into this system that's well drilled and nothing looks any different. You guys collapsed because you became complacent as a team, including your senior players. And in fact, in that moment, I actually understand why Pep did what he did. But when you think about the circumstance, it was probably better to keep your players on and see out that result. But I'm talking about games against Brighton's, games against Manchester United's, games against teams that Tottenham, I know they have a good record against you at home. You could have given, not all of them at the same time, I'm saying here. You could have gone, you know, we need some extra legs in the midfield today. O'Reilly's going in or a McAtee's going in to give you something extra. I'm not saying play a team full of children.
Played against Brighton.
Okay,
no, the main thing, though,
I've already mentioned I've already said I understand the criticism when it comes to defenders because your defenders are made to do a lot of one-on-one defending. You don't really defend as a unit because of how high up you push. But the point I'm saying is this. I agree that the injury problems have limited your options. But to state hand on heart that Pep's tried everything possible in the last 12 games and there's nothing left to try, I think is disingenuous. Kings, you were going to ask me a question. Sorry.
Yeah, but I think, again, we have to blame Pep for this because at the end of the day, he was the one who was okay to let go of Alvarez. He was okay to let go of Palmer. He didn't give Lavia chance. He didn't give Morgan Rogers chance, Harvard Bellis. And we can see that all of these players, we can't say that all of them just wanted to leave. There was a reason why they wanted to leave because they weren't given a fair chance to show their talent. And we see now again, City are struggling. The senior players are not turning up. They keep on losing. But the young players are not given like a game of 5 games to prove themselves. You can't use 1 or 2 games and be like, okay,
so every time
you didn't perform in 1 or 2 games, then you're not good enough.
So every time a player's let go and there's a poor result, we're gonna look back and be like, oh, these players should have been kept.
You won 4 in a row without them.
No, I don't think it's about. Look, I don't think that's what
I'm saying is that
I don't think that's not what King. So answer it, King. It was your question, but that's not what he's saying.
What I'm saying is that you had these players in your squad, and none of them are kept. Whilst players like a Kevin Phillips, like a Mateus Nunes are coming in, and I'm not seeing anything that these players that you bought are better than the players.
That's a fine criticism, but at the time, These time machine conversations. No, hold on. These time machine conversations are incredibly difficult to really judge. Like you look like a genius when you say, "Oh, look at what this player turned out to be. Why didn't you keep him 2-3 seasons ago?" Well, 2-3 seasons ago, they weren't touching the pitch because of the quality of the squad that we had.
Can I say though, V? Where I challenge you on that, Kings? I just want to